And we are live. Jeff,
Awesome. How are you, Chris?
couldn't be better, with the exception that I can't wait to have Ethan on full time to do what I'm consistently messing up
That's
here.
great. Welcome, everyone. It's a wonderful Friday. This is Your Bytes, Your Rights. We are a live weekly discussion and podcast about data ownership, digital rights, and your privacy. In episode 31, the topic is Profiled to Death, when privacy is about more than just ads. I'm Jeff 𝗙𝗃𝗁𝗁, founder of Privacy Plan and a vocal data privacy researcher. I live at the intersection of privacy and data about privacy. I'm here with my co-host, 𝗙cie𝗂𝗁𝗃𝗁𝗰𝗆, managing partner at 𝗙cie Capital. Chris runs a VC fund that focuses on blockchain solutions. He's into privacy, identity, and the future of money, also recreating reality consensus. Again, say hello, Chris.
Hey, yeah, in principle, this is probably the most important topic, at least in my mind, because like I keep telling people, we never built the web, we built the commercial web, and as an externality, we splintered the reality. So there was a discussion for a long time that goes back to like the mid-90s about the potential of us developing not the internet, but the splinter net. And essentially that's what we did, but it happened a little different than we thought about back then when we were selling dial-up services. It happened more by the way of commercialization rather than different countries necessarily intervening. But the externalities are actually, I'd say, exponentially worse. And we see this obviously on a daily basis, and we had a very long discussion about that twice yesterday. So yeah, most exciting topic for me. Everything else is kind of downstream from this discussion.
Absolutely. You know, it reminds me of a story. I had a business partner a long time ago, actually, just as the internet was sort of forming, and even before there were a lot of GUI faces. I think it was right about the time that Netscape browser launched. People were still playing around. You were still, you know, sort of a techno geek if you knew how to type HTTP:// right? And this business partner of mine, Jim, we were putting together a multimedia program, and we were under the impression that if we could sort of pull people together with this new internet thing, that we could enhance democracy and help people do electronic voting and all these kinds of really great things like that.
Yeah. And today we are back to the future.
Right? Right, you know,
back to that
future. 30 years later, right? We still seem to be sort of in the same spot. But to get sort of back to the topic today, I want to take you back to Dateline 1999, Chris.
Okay. Should we first reach out to a few people in the audience and see if someone wants to join us on the panel?
Well,
Kimberly.
Yeah, we want to bring some people up.
But, yeah, just raise your hands. Don't have to be both, can be just one.
Absolutely. And so I was going to do that in a moment, but we are going to have no panelists today, so let's go ahead and do that part, right? So we are going to have an open discussion. So we're going to pull members from the audience in if they want to come up and talk about things. So we can do that, and you can pull them up if they want to raise their hands now or at any point during the discussion. But I'll go ahead and to sort of get into this this first story, right? So Dateline 1999, probably most of you have not heard this story since it was so long ago. But on the last day of her life, Amy Boyer could not have known that a killer was waiting for her on her way home from work. But her stalker knew exactly where she was going to be. And as the 20-year-old dental assistant slipped into her Honda Accord on a quiet road just off Main Street, the obsessed young man pulled up beside her, shot her repeatedly, and then turned the gun on himself. A 2002 Washington Post article tells us more about the situation. It was a murder-suicide, of course, right? Drew very large national attention for weeks because the gunman, a former classmate, whose name was Liam Younes, I think, had bought her social security number from an internet information broker. what we call a data broker today for $45. Police said he used it as the key to find her workplace. We would later find out, though, that court documents and interviews showed that the company Ewens used, 𝗙𝗍𝗄𝗁 of Boca Raton, Florida, went far beyond simple database searches and into a growing gray market at that point, right, that often relied on trickery, something known as pretexting, to obtain personal information. Then for a $75 fee, 𝗙𝗍𝗄𝗁 hired a Brooklyn, New York woman who called associates.𝗙𝗶𝗧 and obtained her work address. It's unclear what persona the woman, Michelle Gambino, adopted, but 𝗙𝗍𝗄𝗁 owner Daniel Cohn acknowledged that Gambino used a ruse to get the information. She's a much better pretexter than we are, he said. Congress outlawed pretexting, pretext calling for financial data 2 years ago. This was back in 2000 at that point. But brokers and information specialists said pretexting remains an essential part of an industry that routinely sells checking account records, unlisted telephone numbers, and other private details. Now, this was a while ago. After that, back in 2006, actually 2007, President Bush signed a law called the Telephone Records and Privacy Protection Act of 2006, right, that actually made it a federal crime to get information this way in terms of pretexting, pretending you're somebody else and calling up to get that kind of data. But as we all know, right, data brokers gather this information and sell it in vastly greater quantity and detail than that happened way back then, right? There's got to be many more, Amy Boyers than there were back then, right? It's very easy for stalkers to get this kind of information. So what do we have to say about that, Chris and Kimberly?
Let's start with Kimberly.
Oh, gathering information about individuals is much easier than it should be. And that is a definite concern. If you're the one that is being harassed or being bothered, knowing who's bothering you is one thing. However, if you're on an individual such as this young lady who had no idea, had no clue, it's of great concern. And with that, I believe that, especially in today's very digital world, that the exposure is much, much higher, and individuals have to be aware of that and take certain steps. I'm going to use the example of my mother. She likes to talk to people on Facebook, and she tells them where she's going and how she's doing it, and she doesn't realize that she's doing it to the whole world, until we sat down and I said, hey, look, here's your settings. Let's keep this here. Let's keep that there. And don't tell everybody where you're going at every minute.
Right.
It's just not safe. And she was really surprised. And I think that we have a group of individuals in our society that really don't understand the impact. And so it's our job to really make sure they do and take steps to help protect them.
Yeah, I think there should be literally like an alarm going off on your browser, on your app, every time there's something unexpected, right? That when you interact with whatever, a game or something to that extent, and rather than you just playing a game, you're actually broadcasting your location or other personal identifiable data. That should not be possible without being alerted at that particular point in time, and you have to swipe left, swipe right in order for that to not to happen. I think that's so common sensible to me that it's really astonishing that this doesn't already exist and we didn't do this from day one, right? Your mom is obviously not an exception. If we ask the next 100 people on the street, probably one, if at all, would realize that the number of apps on his phone that he or she has just running in the background right now is sharing a tremendous amount of information that they never consented to in a like in a knowing way, right? Just one of those check boxes, right? So that's why I consistently try to reopen the discussion whether or not it's a great idea that we call things privacy, because it seems to me that privacy is something that users experience as a box that they check in order to participate in a service or an app, rather than something that's actually very material to their potentially to their well-being.
I would like to see an interesting a tool. Somebody could probably build this. We have the sort of NLP and image recognition capabilities now, so that whenever somebody posted a social post, a picture, text, right, that it actually analyzed that image and that text and extracted any kind of overt or even covert personal information that could be extracted from that, right? So in the background of your image, if it's got some kind of stuff that could be, you know, figure out something about you or your location, it would sort of pop that up and say, hey, do you really want to share this? You know, because it's got this kind of data in it. Or if you said something about your location or your schedule or your beliefs or your whatever, right, that it could actually pop up and say, hey, do you really want to share this? I mean, social media apps should maybe be offering these kinds of things, but of course that would inhibit people from posting, and they don't want to do that, right?
Yeah, it's not a matter of should, that should be a legal requirement. To me, it's no different than someone entering my room here and going through my stuff while I do things, and like telling everybody Chris is at the office, here's where the office is. If you want to bother him, you know where to bother him, essentially. There's no difference. Right?
Yep. It is very interesting. Yeah, I was thinking about something else too, but I lost that train of thought. I wonder if there's a way we could actually tell how many other 𝗍𝗍𝗄𝗏𝗍s are out there. We don't track that kind of information about stalking deaths or other things like that, and how they might be tied back to data brokers, for instance, right? I doubt there's any way that we could find those kinds of correlations easily, because we don't, you know, cops aren't, you know, tracking that kind of information as far as I know.
It's before that, ultimately, in my opinion. So what I mean by that, and that's my typical example, there's probably a person doing something entirely dumb right now based on information that she found online. Right, so someone found information online that it's a good idea to drink bleach to cure yourself from COVID or whatever other chemical. Like, how did this person derive at that information? Who is ultimately culpable? Right? So because just someone posting nonsense doesn't necessarily lead to someone believing. There's additional factors, and I usually refer to that as social engineering, and in this particular case might be even a solution that offers social engineering as a service, and that led to that particular outcome because that particular child, this particular individual, was just helpless based on the overwhelming amount of information that was available to that platform at that moment in time, so that with high probability I could influence his or her behavior into doing something. And that something could be something that is self-harming. Yeah. And that's the starting point. You don't actually need necessarily an additional actor in that sense.
True, true. Yeah, it's pretty easy to influence kids, especially if you think about, you know, filter bubbles and, you know, just giving them some interesting information that sounds somewhat compelling from a couple different sources, and, you know, some peer pressure, and then you get, you know, Tide Pods, you know, crap like that, right? It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, Kimberly, how old is your mom, if you don't mind me asking?
She's in her 70s.
And did she change her behavior now based on your information? Or?
Yes, we do a regular check, and, you know, so there's a lot of things that I've tried to to teach her and to help her learn. And she's been really receptive about it. But it really comes down to there are things that we do for those around us that would be nice to be able to give them their privacy. You know, I don't want to go into her computer and her phone all the time, but I want to make sure she's safe.
Yeah.
So how do I do that? You know, just the idea of a tool that would be awesome. If I could say, hey mom, let's put this on your stuff. This is going to throw up some notifications for you. Just pay attention to them and take action appropriately, you know, then she's empowered. And that's the same with kids. If you, those with kids, tell them to clean their room. Yeah. Okay. Enough said. You ask them to do things, and they think, oh, I don't need to do that because I know better. But explaining and the visual of seeing it is really key.
Yeah. Hand holding.
There are, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's something we want to do in the future. So Jeff and I were just discussing how we can create a very accessible program to walk people through that, because unfortunately it's super involved, right? So to actually close down all the hatches that are transmitting information about you, starts with your internet service provider, moves on to your browser, and then whatever services and applications you're using. There is so many things you need to check off that even people like Jeff and I struggle to do that, quote unquote, right every single day. So your average user basically doesn't stand a chance at this point in time. So Jeff and I, over the next year, and it might take 2, we're going to start aggregating first good advice, then best practices, then ultimately tools. And maybe that will happen in parallel to some extent. But then as an appendix to the show, we'll try to help people like your mom and then make it very specific to certain segments of the population. Like my personal threshold here, and that's something that we do for NGOs, is basically what is the most endangered species out there that's using these technologies. And I usually use this example of if you are living as a dissident under an authoritarian government, and we have pretty direct relationships to these individuals. At that point in time, you're very sensitized to the type of digital technologies that you're engaging with, because, well, you're a target of your own government for crimes like disagreeing with the government's opinion.
Right. You have to think about what your risk profile is, right? I mean, if you're trying to keep the government from finding you, especially a big government, it's incredibly hard to cut off all those information sources and do anything in the digital world. Even if somebody else is after you, that, you know, whether it's a big company or, you know, the mafia or you know, a really pissed off boyfriend or girlfriend or something like that, it's hard to cut off all of your digital dust to be able to avoid those people. Somebody you piss off on Twitter, right, can track you down pretty easily if you're not careful. You have to be very, very careful. And as Chris alluded to, right, if you turn off, you know, 15 different, you know, pieces of your digital dust, but you forget this one over here, they can still find you, right? So it's just very hard to do privacy in the right way. And maybe we should actually talk about doxing a little bit, because that was one of the things we wanted to bring up here, the whistleblower 𝗯nci's report about Twitter and how they're, you know, it used to be that if you had a Twitter account, you were relatively anonymous, right? You don't have to actually sign up with your real name. You've got, you know, an email address that could potentially be anonymous. You didn't used to have to actually give your phone number to create that. Of course, they probably could track your IP in some particular way. But you could be pretty damn anonymous on Twitter, and Twitter kept that user data pretty private as far as we ever knew. It doesn't seem to be so private anymore, though, based upon what 𝗯nci's saying that they're doing with allowing people from the Indian government into their data centers and allowing China to do some interesting stuff with some of their advertising feature functionality to do custom audiences. So I'm a little worried with that.
Well, it's and here again, it starts like 2 steps before that, right? So the first step is don't ever create the data to begin with, but then
Well, sure.
If you create this, like he said, in his estimation, every engineer has basically access to all customer data. Half of the company. So I forgot what the number of employees is, but let's say it's 10,000 employees and 5,000 have complete access to this data. So what are the chances that these 5,000 people have friends that might at some point in time be interested in getting certain information from that, right? That's basically 100%, right?
Right.
And
you don't have to have too many bad apples in there, right?
No.
People with issues, right? In order to have
it's simple statistics at that point in time, right? So you give too many people access, and you get it's the typical saying: with great power comes great responsibility, right? And so they have enormous power by just surveilling everybody, and then abusing that ability by simply creating the data in the first place and then making it available, not necessarily even to third parties, but to their internal employees, and not even knowing if, when, where this data is being accessed, like Much said. That to me is grounds to just shut down the company until they fix that. So if I had the power, if I was, let's say, the Attorney General, and I heard that, and specifically based on the fact that there was already an FTC consent decree in place, I would just tell them, okay, shut down operations. You can open it up again once these security risks are no longer in existence, because apparently fines don't do the trick, right? So they tried that. At some point in time, you feel like a fly. Well, you tried to find them, and that didn't increase behavior. So change the penalty. And there's only one in my mind that's justified at this point. Shut it down. Shut it down until morale improves.
Yeah. I don't know whether, well, the FTC probably has the power to do that, though they would have to do some court maneuvering to make that happen. But one thing that people don't realize is that the GDPR enforcement powers actually do have that ability. They have the ability to walk into any office and essentially take any documents and pretty much do whatever the hell they want to enforce GDPR privacy law, and including shutting down companies, I believe. I'm not a lawyer. I'm obviously a privacy expert. I'm not a lawyer, but I think that they can actually probably stop businesses even more readily than the FTC might be able to. They haven't ever done that, but I think that they can. I know that they can just.
Maybe Heidi knows that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe somebody else could weigh in there, but I'm pretty sure that I know that they could just walk into any offices whenever they want and take documents. I know they've got that kind of power. I imagine they could probably shut you down in the same way.
Yeah, so Vikram wanted to talk about stalkerware. So let me know when you're ready to do that. That's a topic I'm super interested in, obviously. Hey, Vikram.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for the opportunity. I just wanted to comment, and especially given the way the show started today, it is a topic close to my heart in terms of being able to provide methodologies for detection. And it's something that we are actively working on in my company. And I will commit as a CEO of a company that I will, for public good, give out an instance of my software if it can help in the cause for it to run. And we will host it. We will run it in the cloud so that we can offer a free mechanism for which people can access and determine if they have access to stalkerware.
Oh, yeah, that's excellent. I can connect you with the NGOs that we are supporting, because that's exactly what they need.
Yep. And whatever we need to do to enable the public-private partnerships around that, happy to work on that. And a second point I wanted to comment on is something that Kimberly mentioned is, and you mentioned, Jeff, is I think if we try to address the privacy problem of go turn off this setting on Facebook, go turn off this setting on your browser, go reset your ad ID, I think it gets complex very quick and very hard to explain. And to Kimberly's point about empowering her mother, I think if we enable the argument as in let people make the informed choices, right? How about if we can give people true insights on where you've lost what data, right? Who has access to your geolocation? If I can give you a comprehensive list of that, I think that enables people to make the informed choices on what they want to use. And maybe the informed choice is the least technical, right? They may just say, okay, I'm scared of this thing now. Maybe I just delete this app, right? And it's game over, right? So I think there's a very crucial point in that empowerment and how we enable that empowerment.
Yeah, and it has to be user-friendly, right? That's the problem, right? So if you have, people usually have dozens of apps on their phone, they forget that they installed something, they might have installed some software on their computer or not updated their computer, they have cookies, and they accumulate all these risks over time. And there's no like easy button. There's no like button that you can push that would just turn off information sharing wholesale until you reactivate that, which is, again, which is kind of absurd in a way, that we have to go through these troubles in order to make that possible, because that should be default, not the other way around, right? So my standard is kind of always the same. If the government was going to do something like that, or a government agency, then that agency and that agent would need a court order and a warrant to do that. And for what reason is it justified that commercial interest can just do this milli-vanilli? Is just check a box that you agree to something that you never read, and that removes the entire need of ever needing a warrant, right? So, and there specifically, and then I stop my little rant as usual, but there specifically, if you think about that, that entirely circumvents our rule of law, because in that government scenario where the government agents would need a warrant, well, now he can just rely on the fact that whoever he or she wants information about is already being surveilled by default, and they can just later on subpoena that, whereas if they were trying to do that before, a court would have probably denied that, right?
Yeah.
And then
But it's not just the government, Chris.
Right.
The copies of data that get made, upon that supposed consent, is just crazy, right? I mean, if you look at the 𝗙cie𝗶𝗶𝗃 case that the FTC is prosecuting now, 𝗙cie𝗶𝗶𝗃 is a data broker that claims that they've got legal consent for all of this location data, for instance, that they track. But I would bet that 90% of the people that they have this location data on would say, wait a second, how did you get my location data? I didn't consent to that. And if I did, I didn't realize that I consented to it, and I didn't know it was going to go to you. And if I did, I want to take that consent back now. But there's no easy way to take that consent back. There's probably no way at all, let alone an easy way. So how do we handle that situation? We apparently can't. And there's no easy way for anybody to actually know that 𝗙cie𝗶𝗶𝗃 has their data, because they're, first of all, shadowy, and second of all, the only reason anybody knows about it is because of this lawsuit, right?
Yeah, I keep hearing this ad about this company, 𝗙•. Have you heard about that one? Like data?
Melissa Data?
Yeah.
Oh, they've been around for a long, long time.
So that bothers me, like just the way they are advertising. It says, we are the address experts. It's like, okay, that's not a good thing.
Well, it's really interesting.
Gentlemen, we went from, okay, I mean, this is going to age me because my kid doesn't know what one is anymore, is a phone book where you
Right.
could look up the address of somebody and you had their phone number and you could go to their house and stuff. To today, you can actually know or find out with not much of an issue. I go to Starbucks every morning at 8 o'clock. I get the same order. I get, and then I leave and I go to the bank and make a deposit for my work. So if I were wanting to rob my business or my person, I know exactly when I'm going to be where. And that's much more invasive and along the lines of what we're talking about. And we do that because, yes, I want to put my order in at Starbucks so it's ready when I get there. I have on my calendar that, I got to go to the bank every day at this time, so I've got it blocked off. My traffic map is set to where it's going to go to that. I've got a preset route every day. I go the same route. And, so people get in a habit because it's comfortable, because it's normal to them. And they don't think about what that means to somebody that's looking at them or wants to do something to them, just like with the stalker and such. We see so many instances of predatory casing of individuals, young girls, children, everything, that we have to get people out of that comfort zone to where they're thinking about it. Again, coming back to that notification of what data is being gathered and how do we do that effectively, that people aren't just, oh yeah, click past it, I'm done, because I want to get my Starbucks order in, or I want to get my coffee order in at my local coffee shop. And then I need to go to the bank, and then I'm going to go over here. And later I'm going to go pick up my groceries from the store because I put my order in, and somebody who can get into that app knows that every week I buy, several things of beer, and I have this and I have that. And yet the companies that I'm working with, the coffee company is going to send me offers for more coffee. The traffic map is going to say, well, what about this place that's just off the route to go try out for lunch? And then my grocery store is going to say, well, hey, we've got deals on this and this and this because of your past purchasing thing. We love convenience. I'll be the first to admit it. I love my convenience. But if I were not a privacy professional, would I have any clue of all of this? Yes, there's lots of noise on the news and stuff, but to most people, it's news. It's, oh, that wouldn't happen to me. That wouldn't happen to me. And so we need to engage more in awareness.
Let's talk about that a little bit further, though. Even if we were completely aware and if we fixed all of our privacy settings, unless we stop doing stuff in the modern world, if we stop making credit card purchases, if we stop driving our car around with license plates, government organizations and even some private organizations can still track us. Automatic license plate readers are getting really invasive all over the place. The financial data that flows around about us through data brokers, financial data brokers, is getting pretty horrifying. If you're buying stuff, that those transactions, medical transactions, financial transactions, go pretty much everywhere. I would be pretty concerned. The UN report on privacy and human rights actually has sort of 3 different bullet points they sort of focus on. One is abusive and intrusive hacking tools like spyware, the Pegasus stuff, right? The second is talking about how we need sort of robust encryption stuff to protect us. And the third is digital memories, which is
Jeff, I think your internet connection is a little low. You are frozen, so I'm gonna take over here. I posted a link to that report. It's only 17 pages into the chat window on Zoom. I will post it on the LinkedIn thread as well. It's an interesting read. It probably doesn't actually go far enough, probably in terms of identifying these threats. Like from a technology perspective, I think the people that aggregated this are not really clued into the latest technologies by and large. Jeff, you're back. Oh, we got Jeff frozen. Okay. All right, but yeah, makes for an interesting read regardless. Vikram.
So I had a point again, based on what Jeff and Kimberly were just talking about, right? It's with respect to these kinds of usage of these services. Me too. I love my convenience. I don't want to stop using these apps and services and devices as well, right? But let's think about it this way. Back when we didn't have these, or back when the dangers that we faced were very different, back in the 70s and 80s and etc. We had a set of hygiene requirements, safety hygiene requirements, right? So we like when you're going to school, don't talk to a stranger. If a stranger tells you to come with them, don't go with them, right? So what are those? How can we think about what are those kind of safety prerogatives? It's not just people are sick and tired of hearing change your password and or only go swipe your credit card and I trust. They've all heard this a million times over. But then are there a set of safety prerogatives, or how can I digitally guide somebody to watch your back when you're on the internet highway, right? And what are those sets of instructions that we can get to people in a very simple, digestible fashion? And I think there's a lot of thought process that everybody needs to put into to make that simple and understandable.
Yeah, as the human rights reports go specifically into that Pegasus software case, which is just outrageous. If you haven't heard about that, there's a company that was selling. I don't know if I hope they're shut down. I don't remember, Jeff. Are they still active? Do you know? But they were selling spy software that would circumvent iOS and Android without much effort, essentially. And this company was actively selling this to hostile governments for them to crack down on dissidents and otherwise unwanted parties. It's just outrageous as an Israeli cyber company. That just boggles the mind that these entities can exist. But then again, I think of Google and Facebook in that same category, right? I don't think they're much different in that sense. You can readily use those tools to start surveilling people. I think we lost Jeff entirely. His machine probably crashed. He mentioned earlier as problems with that. But yeah, so Vikram, you said you guys are working on a one push button that can make it so that you are no longer sharing certain information.
I mean, it's more around the informed choice, right? So I don't want to promote my company in this. It's about, I want to be able to understand what information I reveal to whom, number one, and then be able to make choices around that. And maybe I want to block access to those applications entirely, or even delete them. Maybe that's a choice. Maybe not use our product and just plain delete them. Mm-hmm. Or the third choice might be, well, I got to use it. I have no option. My school requires me, my workplace requires me, or I just need it for my daily life, but I shall at least block off access to every other party other than that specific company as well, alone, right? So how do we start to give people those insights to make those informed choices and then allow them to make that kind of choice? So that's where we're taking it. So second piece to that is also identifying what is necessary. The subtext to what I just said is, for every app, device, and service, what is necessary for the functioning of that app, device, or service, right, and what is not, whether it's malicious or privacy violating or otherwise, building knowledge around what that is really what we are focusing on.
Okay. So what do you tell people who like look at the iPhone, then they see, oh, there's VPN already set up. I mean, as of late, Apple has been positioning themselves as we are the privacy advocate. We are the people that provide you with free VPN service. We're going to cut off location services sharing between apps. Is that mostly window dressing and virtual signaling, or how effective is that really from your experience?
So fundamentally, as much as we like to not trust the bigger companies here, I will actually give kudos to Apple on this for one big reason. Given their footprint, they've raised the awareness of some of these privacy issues more than any of us could have fundamentally done by ourselves, right? So there's a heightened level of awareness, and they brought it into some simple features, right? Now, one thing I will say is that, yes, it's window dressing because at the end of the day, you're still allowing a mechanism to enable the access. And then once access is enabled, it's kind of there forever. Now, how do you also let the customer know that on the next app update or any other kind of update that it doesn't get turned on by default, or this same company is not acquiring that data from a different source, right? So if you have one scenario is there are app vendors who make multiple different apps. So I can collect geolocation on one and say I'm not collecting anything else on that app. I can collect email on another, etc., and then cross match. And now next thing I know, I have 10 pieces of data about you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how does it prevent that? Number one. The second thing about the private relay and the VPN is, I think we as a privacy industry need to do a better job of enunciating the fact that VPN is not a privacy solution, because the VPN owner knows everything about you, right? And a lot of people seem to say, oh, is that a VPN? I use a VPN. I must be safe. We got to start saying, no, you're not. And not to mention that there are a lot of very malicious VPN vendors out there as well, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's two pieces to this. There is a definite positive in that the awareness level has gone up, and the negative is that it's sending a false level of security as well. And I think the focus has to be on giving people enough insight that they can make the informed choices for themselves.
Welcome back, Jeff. And you're mute.
Yeah, sorry. I agree with you on the VPNs not necessarily being a perfect solution. I actually saw something that I really liked maybe about a year ago, and I don't think that solution works anymore. But a security professional had figured out a way to do sort of daisy chain VPNs such that you sort of had two going, and one of those VPNs would know who you are, and the other VPN would know where you were going, but they wouldn't know the two pieces together, right? Which is maybe a better solution. But if you only have one VPN, they know who you are and they know where you're going. So that's maybe not exactly the solution people are looking for.
Yeah, as a side note, so actually this month, for the first time in the United States, iOS on smartphones has exceeded 50% of the smartphone market in the United States. Worldwide, it's obviously a very different picture still, with most people just being limited to Android devices, if that's a fair description. And like when we evaluate solutions for these markets, that's one of our requirements, whether or not this particular app, for example, can work on really simple devices that are not as sophisticated as the latest iPhone device, because by and large, what's being marketed on a day-to-day basis are these very heavy apps that people find on the top of the App Store markets. But the reality on the ground is somewhat different, as in we did analysis of the African markets for different payment solutions, and there a lot of people cannot even download these apps. right? So they're too big for their smartphones. They take up too much space on their smartphone. So this goes to the point of you got to have a certain audience in mind. You have to actually be able to cater what I call the lowest common denominator. And that should always be the most like unfortunate in society. So it should work for them, right, as a starting point. And then you can build on that. But in my mind, we should invalidate everything else, right? So if a dissident in the Middle East with a really cheap smartphone that he or she bought for $20 for cash somewhere in the counter cannot use your particular solution, then actually probably no one should be using it.
You know, the issue we have, Chris, is that it doesn't help to be private if you're unable to communicate with anybody, right?
Yes.
If you're a dissident, if you're an activist, if you're somebody that wants to change the world or change your situation or something, right? Being private is only half the solution, right? You still have to be able to communicate with people. So otherwise, you know, what's the point? What's the point of living, right? You need to be able to live a life. You need to be able to communicate your ideas. You need to be able to communicate with other people, or else what's the effing point?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at Silent Phone yesterday, which is a secure communication platform that will work on Android and iPhone. But immediately doing the sign up, I mean, it's a $10 a month solution, so that's already out of reach for a lot of people that I have in mind at that point in time, because $10 for a lot of people around the world is more than they make in a week. But the other point there was, it was very apparent that you had to invite people to that in order for it to actually be secure. So yeah, other people also had then to join that network, had to download that application for you to have to end-to-end encryption using that network. And so unfortunately, all of these solutions are based on network effects. And there we just have a lot of capture, and a lot of capture by really malicious entities at this point in time that really don't put their quote unquote user interest at the forefront, because they just optimizing for shareholder value at the end of the day. And you can't really fault them for that, albeit I would fault them for simply the fact that they don't even measure the externalities that they're creating by promoting certain services in a particular way. So that should be the minimum requirement, right? So like measure for the externalities. If you're driving a car that's polluting the environment, or producing a car that's polluting the environment, you have to do that. If you're creating an application that pollutes basically this digital, what I call the digital landfill that people think is the World Wide Web, then we should at least at a minimum require that this is being measured. Like, and in real time. Tell me in real time, how much time of people did you waste today? Or how many people had negative consequences based on interacting with your particular digital solution? Doesn't matter if that's Facebook or yet another app for your cell phone that just happens to be on top of the App Store because you spend $10 million in marketing and pushing it in front of the right eyeballs to turn them into a little lab rat, stimulating their lizard brains.
Hasn't the language around the conversation around those sort of terms have changed a little bit? It seems that people used to talk a lot about the attention economy and the user-generated content economy, right? They don't really call it that anymore, do they, Chris?
I don't know. I shared this book with you yesterday. I didn't get around to read it yet, but I'll put it into the show notes because, yeah, anecdotally, that's where this particular book is going. But to me, it's never been about that. It's really more about being able to influence the behavior of people. I don't know if that's necessary attention, because attention is kind of top of the funnel. If I get all of your attention because of some accident, right? So the typical example is you drive on a freeway and freeways on the other, the traffic on the other side is slowing down. Why? Because there's an accident on the other side and people like to watch that for whatever bizarre reason. And that's kind of the same principle that you see online in essence, right? So there's like an accident, some headline saying, oh, you won't believe what happened to 𝗙𝗍𝗶𝗶𝗃𝗰𝘆 today. It's a disaster. Check it out here, right? People, for some reason, are attracted to that. But again, that's just like the attention grabber and top of the funnel. The more malicious thing is usually happening afterwards. So now I have your attention, and now I want to mold your behavior into an action that's beneficial to me, whoever me is, right? So me could be a quote unquote advertiser that wants to sell me something useless. And because I now have his or her attention, I'm engaged with that, but obviously these things are non-directional. And what I mean by that, and that's really the worst thing in my mind, really. Usually when you get to engage with technology, you set the direction. I've used this example many times, so sorry if I'm boring anybody, but to me, it's the same thing as if my electric car decided that once I sit down, it takes me a certain route to a certain destination, right? And not me setting the route or the destination. It just makes no sense. To me, that also makes no sense when I engage with digital technology. That should be the first question that the technology is pushing in front of me. Where do you want to go? How do you want to go there? Right? And that this is even a business model that you can sell social engineering as a service. And that should be so obvious now, right? So that's why when I listen to this congressional hearings, as far evolved as they have gotten, they get still away with like claiming we sell advertising. But that's not what they do. That's not what they have ever done, right? That's like observably not what's happening. They're selling social engineering as a service to the highest bidder. It's not advertising. So that we allow this as a business model seems, to this day, has been, once I came to this realization like 14 years ago, it seemed utterly absurd, and I was looking for people who would point that out, this out, and start doing something in both a civil and a criminal procedural way. And that's still not happening. And not only that, but we're not even calling it on a regular basis what it is. They should not be allowed to call it advertising as a start.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just the ads that people put out there, right? It's the fact that you can direct conversations in certain ways and create groups, and push people's attitudes and ideas in certain ways, right? Through these platforms.
Yeah, or just the mood or the opinion on certain topics. It doesn't matter to them, right? It's entirely irrelevant. It's psyops, essentially. It's individualized psyops. Yeah, and we are the lucky ones, right? So in countries that still proclaim to uphold the rule of law, we are still the lucky ones. If you're living under some authoritarian government, as most people do, you're not so lucky, right? So if Google, Facebook, Twitter is allowed to operate there and kind of adheres to their laws, which I always put this in quotes because what people usually refer to is not laws, when they don't call this laws. Those are the local rules.
Yeah.
Right. So that's very different. So that's another point that American companies specifically shouldn't get away with that excuse, well, we're following the local laws. Well, it doesn't really matter, right? If these local rules, local laws violate just basic human rights, like freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of movement, and other things, then you should be required to ignore that or not operate there, period. Well, not operate there. I'll take that part back, because you should operate there, but be aware that if you are operating there, you cannot just like apply those local rules because they exist. That's not a good enough excuse.
Yeah. Chris, before we end up here, I want to plug Bob Sullivan's podcast. There's a podcast called 𝗙់_Bob, which sounds sort of like a strange name for a podcast. And it's actually a podcast that's not active at the moment, though Bob told me a few months back that it may actually come back alive at some point. But Bob Sullivan is sort of a researcher, and he does some work around the privacy arena. And the 𝗙់_Bob podcast actually has sort of a series inside of it called No Place to Hide, which is a really interesting series that talks about data brokers and stalking. And he does this series with a co-host, and it's really well produced and really interesting for any privacy professional to check it out. I really loved it when I listened to it, and I think it really brings home some of these fears of being profiled to death. So if you like the story about Amy Boyer that we started this this episode with, you really want to listen to the No Place to Hide episode, because it talks about exactly that kind of privacy threat. So,
and I put the link to the how to destroy the attention economy.
oh, good. That's a new one from
notes.
Core Doctorow, right?
Yes, I'm going to check into that over the weekend if I can. But I think that's also worth listening to.
Yeah, I have not checked that out yet, but that looks like an awesome series. So I would recommend it even without having read it, because Core Doctorow has some awesome content.
Yeah,
he's a wonderful writer.
Yeah. All right, folks, we're at the top of the hour. Again, today we didn't have a necessary scheduled panelist. We're trying to batch this better and also finish our playing around with technology things to make things more pleasant for everybody to watch, and not for people and pictures and sounds to disappear all the time. Ethan was nice enough to text me saying, hey, you don't have sound on YouTube. So whoever was trying to watch it on YouTube in the beginning, there was no sound in the beginning. We will upload the local recording as we have to, probably every couple of weeks. But we'll keep doing that until we get it right. We're committed to that. If you want to support us, just dial in again next week, or send us show ideas or people that we should have on, topics we should have on. And Jeff, I think we should, do we have this public, the future topics?
Yeah, that spreadsheet's public.
Okay, so yeah, but we should promote this a little more, and then maybe start inviting people to our production meeting. So we actually have a weekly production meeting, believe it or not. This is not entirely spur of the moment, and typically we talk for 3 hours to make this Friday show happen. And yeah, we want to make it most useful for everybody, and not just vent ultimately, but produce solutions that are actionable and that can make a difference to people's lives who are way more affected than we are. All right, with that said, do you want to lead us out, Jeff?
Yeah, well, we want to thank the people that came up, was that Vikram and also Kimberly for joining the podcast and episode this week. And we don't know what the episode is going to be next week, but look for something over the weekend where we'll publish that. And we hope you'll join us next week for episode 32 of Your Bites, Your Rights. Everyone, we hope you have a great weekend.
And we are out.
All right.
Daniel is still in the audience, but I assume he just walked away. Oh, he wants to
There
talk.
he is.
Yeah.
How you doing, Daniel?
Hello, hello. Sorry. I was like clicking buttons in order to join. Just to say hello. I enjoyed the conversation a lot. Been just obviously doing some background work at the same time, but I mean, again, it's super interesting. Just wanted to thank you and say hello to both, because obviously I am a huge fan of the program and that all the topics I'm just nudging all the time, like saying, yeah, that's true.
Appreciate that, buddy.
Yeah, that's very kind of you. Yeah, but I mean, we're committed to like get it right and do it for a long time, right? So once, at least that holds true for me, I'll let Jeff speak for himself, but once I start something, I'll claw into that. So I've been at this topic for 14 years. And so now
Wow.
I'm like channeling it into different action groups. And so this is one of them, right? So there's like 2-3 other ones that work away on certain topics. Like there's our diff group where we work away at the KYC problem, which is just another word for wholesale warrantless surveillance of all your personal financial data.
Oh my God.
For no technical reason. And so that's what we do at the Banking and Finance SIG at the Decentralized Identity Foundation. But again, my day job is as a VC, so I'll try to apply that mindset as in, can this particular effort produce a viable long-term outcome within our horizon? So my horizon is usually 10 years kind of. And so within that horizon, what's possible, right? Because what I see, unfortunately, a lot is a lot of very well-intended efforts, but they are too grand. So you're trying to take on a problem that is so multifaceted. You need buy-in from so many different stakeholders, and that could be standard setting for data, or that could be politicians in general, or this could be incumbents. That's actually the most common problem and so forth. So point there being is, so we're trying to identify those things where we can make a meaningful difference for kind of our ecosystem. By ecosystem, I mean the whole, like what people call the crypto space, which to me is oftentimes too narrowly phrased. That's why I use those air quotes yet again, very annoyingly. But point there being is what we're really doing, in my opinion, we're building the global communications network. So we're building the World Wide Web for the first time. And if there's that's pretty binary here. What I mean by that is, so either we create a complete surveillance stack for malicious actor to use, or we create, let's call it loosely, freedom technologies that allow censorship resistant communication, and including communication of value globally for everybody. And so we're fighting for the leader in hopefully effective chunkable steps, right?
It really is a binary choice, I think.
It is a binary choice.
I believe that's the negotiation that Neo and the Matrix, or the machine.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I gotta jump on another call, guys.
Okay.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
Yes, Chris. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Gotta jump. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.